give it up to Katie Dye, who runs our consulting services team.
What's up? Thank you. Teed me up a little bit. Awesome. Well, I don't really think I have to speak much further than what Thomas just said. That kind of takes everything. But yeah, we're going to talk a lot about executing. So I think where I come in with a lot of projects we get is they're kind of sold this vision. Like Susan is like, here's the art of the possible. They come in, they're staring. Whoop. All right, they're staring at it and they're not really sure, what do I do with it? And we work with a lot of customers who probably should have a 6sense, don't have a 6sense, so we're kind of piecing things together through Clay, through Unify, and then pushing everything into Salesloft. So at the end, everything does get into an execution platform. We have a lot of experience with Salesloft. A couple people use Hubspot too, so we'll kind of talk about that. But pretty much, like I said, to echo really what Susan said, is buyers are overloaded today. I think every single person in this room probably could look at their inbox and has seen at least 2 cold emails I got today that have nothing to do with your role, also has nothing to do with what you're doing current state. So I got one this morning asking about the CSMs I manage. So I don't manage anybody. And so that's the biggest one. AI has obviously made automated outreach easier. Also just a lot of cluttered inboxes, so no one's really looking at it. And also timing is everything. So Susan, to your point, 70% of people are doing a buying journey before they even engage with sales. Not really our job to come in early to start asking for a meeting, asking for a demo, asking for them to book time. We're here to educate them throughout that journey. And so a lot of what that is surfacing the information. A lot of people we work with right now think they have that information. Marketing surfacing that information, 6sense is surfacing that information, and reps are doing literally nothing with it. And then when you ask them later, they're like, I didn't know where to look. I don't know what to look at. I don't know what this means, what to send. And so that's kind of where we come in specifically, is just to make sure we're getting the right messaging and the sales see that information. What we really focus on, I think, is just precision over volume. So like I said, I think a lot of people are still spraying and praying. You're reaching 60% of the people you're reaching are not in a buying moment. So that's kind of what we're looking at here, is it's all about a combination of timing and context. So why are we reaching out now? Like I said, I think from a sales tempo perspective and all of our customers, we don't really care about activity levels anymore. I think that was a big one, is like, to be able to book 10 meetings, I need 1,000 new leads a week. That's really not the case anymore. It's more about just reaching the correct leads who are in those buying stages. So we use a combination of kind of different execution workflows for that. I'd say the biggest one we focus on right now is just workflow automation. So I think Zach said, like, CRM data, making sure it's up to date. How do we auto enrich that? How do we say, Amy's on our website, what does she do? What's her title? How long has she been there? Is she in an active role that would be part of that buying committee, et cetera? So we're able to do that. We're also able to filter out incorrect ICPs. So a lot of people on your website, a lot of noise. Again, who is actually someone we would want to reach out to? I think one of our customers we work with has hundreds of thousands of visitors to their website, and a lot of them just are not buying groups, not even a company at all, it's just a lot of people. So for a while, they were just firing off emails to everybody. We're trying to get it to the point where they're firing off emails to people that are actually going to be buying. And then the biggest thing I think we talk about is just meeting buyers where they are. So like I said, from a 6sense perspective and an intent perspective, how do we help identify and kind of reach out to these people? Both quiet inbound, so again, they're on the demo pages, they're on the pricing pages, they're on your website, but also change-based signals. So a lot of what we're doing is, again, the company's entering a stage where they're starting that buying process. How are we able to surface that information and reach out really with educational content? So a lot of what Thomas and I do at one company is not necessarily asking for a meeting. It's more so just saying, hey, I noticed Clary and Salesloft merged. Morgan, for example, oversees the education team. How are you handling 2 knowledge bases merging, right? Like, here's something that could be helpful for you. And so it's more education. So at that point, to what Susan said earlier, when you choose your shortlist, we've made it on there because we've provided enough information and we're like helpful and we're able to kind of give that education. And then last but not least, kind of where Salesloft comes in a little bit is just the visibility aspect. So again, all of us are super busy. We don't have time to research companies. I don't know what happened when Thomas had a conversation, passed it off to the account executive. What happened next? Maybe they were in a buying mood previously. We lost the account. A year later, they're back in that process again for whatever reason. What did our last conversations happen? Like, what was that information? So those are kind of the 3 things that we focus on for projects. Again, it really depends on who they are and kind of what really where they are in the buying and selling process. But we'll kind of talk through what some of those look like for Clay. Biggest thing, like Thomas said, we're gonna go through Clay, Salesloft, Unify, Hubspot. It's less really about the platform, it's more about just how you're using it. So like I said, I think a lot of our customers probably could use 6sense. I think they'd get better data. You'll see here in a second why I say that. But it's more so just like thinking about for your team, like, is the data that we're surfacing the correct information? Is it getting to the sales reps easy? That's like the biggest breakdown that we see is marketing surfaces so much information and no one does anything with it. So our point is like, our job is to connect that information. And then honestly, could you build something similar with what you have today? If not, what's missing? Kind of where are the gaps that we have? One of the things that we do for workflow automation, kind of a cool process we do for Clay is we filter in missing information. So like I said earlier, we have a lot of customers who a little more price conscious, probably a lot smaller than a typical 6sense customer. Obviously with price conscious, you don't get the best information that you get with kind of what 6sense could be. So what you guys are seeing here is we work with a customer who uses both Warmly and Vector. Very similar to 6sense surfaces, their job is to de-anonymize your website visitors. That said, nowhere near the 85% that Susan had said earlier. So one of the biggest things that they surface is just LinkedIn URLs or company data, but a lot of times they'll return personal emails. And so I'm not gonna reach out to Nick at his personal email if I know Nick is on my website. I'm gonna wanna find additional information and be able to find his LinkedIn too. We're able to push that LinkedIn URL to marketing so they can send targeted ads. We also now have Nick's work email too. So how this works is we basically tap into Warmly and Vector. We're pulling in that information, and then what we're able to do with that is we're able to filter out anybody with a free domain. So you guys can see this email tab right here, all of our free emails. What we're doing is waterfalling it through and attempting to find their work email. So for the ones that we pulled just this morning, we're able to find some of these out of the gate. You'll also notice we're able to pull a majority of those LinkedIn URLs. Once we do that, we take it a step further because this is kind of what they're doing for targeted ads. We're then coming in, pushing into a separate table and finding their specific company type as well as the industry. So they do different ads based on if it's B2B or B2C. We support a company that basically monitors retail listings for pricing. And so it looks a lot different if I'm selling to a distributor than if I'm selling to the average person. And so their messaging is gonna be a lot different. The problems are a lot different. So we're gonna go ahead and push this information out. So what we do with this is we push it into HubSpot, then they're able to trigger different LinkedIn ads. They're also able to trigger specific messaging. And then at that point, the AE is able to reach out with some educational content here. Second piece we're doing from a just overall kind of intent perspective, like I said, those quiet inbound signals. So we're providing insights into interest. The biggest thing we're working with right now is surfacing some of that website data, being able to kind of interpret the different buying groups. So Susan, like you said earlier, get a lot of content, company data, but we're not really sure what to do with it. And it's also trying to figure out the specific different members of those buying groups. So that's actually where Clay comes in as well as Unify. And so historically, I think whenever we notice somebody was on the website, a lot of our customers will just fire off a very generic email saying, I noticed you're on the website, curious if you wanted more information. What we're able to kind of trigger with this is actually qualify the company. So this is a text messaging company. A lot of people who come and want to buy the business can't send a text message because they support adult content or gambling or CBD. Obviously, all of those are illegal from a text messaging perspective, and so they're automatically disqualified. Not gonna spend time having our sales reps reach out, not going to waste those resources. And the second one is also they need a strong social media presence. So back to what Zach said, it's important to know who actually is gonna use the software and who is successful with the software and ends up buying at the end. We've historically found that people with a small social media presence, no marketing presence, and don't have any events or promotions end up never buying the software and never getting the use out of it. So those are also people that we would filter out from a quality perspective. And once we go ahead and qualify those by scraping kind of the internet, we're able to return that information. We come in and we'll separate them based off of their industry. So again, value props are vastly different for our customers in finance versus healthcare. also going to be vastly different personas, different titles using it. We don't want to send a generic message at this point since they've gotten further along in the process and they're on the demo page. So what we're going to do is basically filter out by different industries here. We'll prospect for different personas, so we'll match personas based off of the industry, and then we will basically find a very specific and targeted message for them in those sequences. So that's Unify. We do the same thing in Clay, and then we'll just push it into Salesloft. So we do have a customer who pushes things directly into Salesloft that way. But again, from an AI perspective, our big piece here is just routing people to the correct place so they're getting the correct message, and they don't necessarily have to get just a very generic message that historically what we've seen in the past. A couple other things we're doing from a Clay perspective for warm outbound. I think, Susan, you mentioned this too. Job changers are huge, new hires are huge. So again, even if I lose you and you don't buy my company, if you go to the next one, maybe your preference did change and you would enter in a buying stage where, hey, maybe this time my company does fit with yours. So easy to pull those. Like I said, biggest thing you'll do is just upload lists of companies, you would upload lists of people, and then you can track that information. We do this across a lot of different ones. So even for like Will back there, we can track if somebody starts a new talent buying agency for festivals. We've talked about that. We can easily track that information and be able to kind of push out different messaging based off of that. So very, very easy to build these. You basically, like I said, need to kind of put in a couple specific parameters, select similar LinkedIn profiles. We're now looking for people like Amy on the solutions consulting team who've left their jobs because we know Amy's a good fit for our software. So a lot of lookalikes for this, a lot of going after, again, those personas and those ICPs that we've targeted. Kind of final thing from a outbound perspective, if we come back here, like I said, new hires, champions, Salesloft, we push things in through Clay since Salesloft doesn't have that functionality yet, but Unify has this functionality as well. And then from a just overall outbound perspective, a lot of what we're finding success with is looking for lookalike companies that are in that buying moment. So not necessarily people who have raised their hand, signed up for a demo, but more so looking for that company information. Again, we're not just going to mass blast out a list of 100 companies that look like a lot of our prospective customers and hope we get those 40% in the buying moment. We're actually going to wait and have these lists sit dormant until they enter into that. So for one of our customers, we have their main customer Sprouts, and they do basically making sure people and products are on the shelves at any given time. And so they do a lot of shelf management. And so we're looking for similar companies. And then what we're able to do is find lookalike companies. We put them into a list like this with all of our information. We make sure they're in the correct ICP. Then basically what this does is we're able to waterfall people for our ideal customer profile after they hit a certain trigger. So what one of our triggers is we're looking for people who post on social media who say that the shelves are empty. And so there's a lot of pictures saying shelves are empty, things are out of stock. What we're able to look for in this example is finding that information, finding people in those specific buying groups like Chief Operating Officer, for example. And then you'll notice we've already had the specific agent scrape, and you'll see it's a lot of information, not gonna read through all of that. But at the bottom, you'll kind of see this information. People posted on multiple public sources saying that they were missing things on the shelves. So that could be a moment where it's like, hey, this is a problem for us. We have a lot of things out of stock. We might be interested in something like Retail Insights, which would go ahead and then show things and help us restock the shelves on time. So that's kind of some of the things we're looking at. Again, not necessarily saying take a meeting with us. It's more so sending educational content, and we're looking for those company triggers that are showing they might be experiencing pain or might be entering that buying mode. And again, all of this does feed into Salesloft. They use Hubspot in this specific example, so we're feeding in through there. All we do is we're just creating a custom field here. That's a snippet, and then we're pushing that directly into the platform. So this example here, I saw that you've been implementing different inventory. A lot of the information is missing. And then we could just say specific information from an educational piece. So also pushing the education side. Obviously that example was showing open to a meeting, but most of these were going to be educational, just sending certain information. So very similar to what we do with another customer for drug prices. they're comparing Ozempic prices because that's top of mind for 60% of Americans right now. But again, it's very educational, just saying, hey, I saw that you had Ozempic listed for $800. Did you know that your competitor CVS across the street is $700? Curious to see how you compare to other people within your area. So those are some of the things we're creating for people and pushing in. But obviously kind of the overarching idea here is this is research that would take hours of a sales rep's time. And this would also be reasons and like a specific thing that like a sales rep would miss, right? And so that's all the things that we're surfacing for them. Requires to have a really good understanding of your ICP and your persona. And then we're pushing all of that information in. Kind of final thing from a actual visibility perspective, I think this is where a lot of our customers actually do use Salesloft and other engagement platforms. The biggest thing, like I said, is there's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of things kind of bouncing around, like marketing sending messaging, we're sending messaging, a sales rep leaves in the middle of the cycle, right? Somebody else comes in, there's a lot of turnover. So a lot of what people are using now from an engagement perspective is going to be the research agent here. Like I said, goal here is we're just trying to get as much information in front of our sales reps as possible. If Zach and I were prospecting into similar companies, Zach has a different ChatGPT response that he looks for, I look for something different. We might show up with two totally different things from like an executive summary or a pain point perspective. So this update's in real time. It's going to show you some of the information. I think something that one of my customers just implemented is using these sales angles. Not always 100% accurate, but it is pretty up to date. You'll notice, like I said, they talked about the Clary merger right here. That was pretty recently announced. A couple other information, and this is really just meant to give our sales reps background. What we actually have been training our reps to do for this specific company. It is a lab company, so they sell different certifications to labs, like scientific labs. And they're able to see new information about if a lab is opening a new location, if there's new policies going into effect in California, for example. That's how they use their sales angles, especially when they're thinking about upselling. So a couple use cases here, not just top of funnel, but this is really useful from an upsell perspective. And then obviously you will see from a Zoom info perspective, and of course with 6sense, you can drop in those recommended buyers. When I'm able to go email these people, we're able to craft information directly here from this overall account research. So that's something that one of our Impact Labs company is using. Cool use case, especially from the new angle follow-up. They have a lot of companies that buy one certification, but not the other. So now they're following up with a second certification, and they've been leveraging the Salesloft research agent for that. Kind of final thing, just key takeaways. Biggest thing is just precision over volume. So like I said, we still work with customers who just want to fire off 100 emails and think that's still the correct way. As you can imagine, response rates for that are incredibly low. And so we've really been working with people to just figure out precision over volume. What are those moments that we want to reach out to them? Our biggest thing is always just to prompt a response or a conversation, not get them on a meeting. So a lot of the communication we've been sending is very targeted, very educational. Things like Unify and Clay, you can pre-add case studies. We've pre-added different information, different customer examples. And then based off of the industry that we return as well as the title, we actually will go ahead and give them a very specific use case. So if we know that a sports team is using our platform for a specific reason, if we see another sports team that has a similar use case, we'll return that customer example directly to them. I would say it doesn't have to be AI-generated content. I think every single person here knows what AI-generated content looks like. I think we're all very turned off on the emojis and the M-dash there, but I would say the biggest thing we've seen success with is not actually AI-generated content, more so you create the content yourself and then just leverage routing and research to make sure they're getting the message that you've already created. And the last two is the biggest thing, keep testing. We've had a lot of people send agents live, and then a week later we'll look at it and it's returning the wrong titles, it's returning titles that maybe are good but not great, and then some of the messaging might be incorrect. So I think one thing Thomas and I do a lot of when we test these with people is do it manually first, the first couple of days, read the messaging, make edits, Thomas gives his feedback, and then we train the agents to kind of take out certain words, change the titles, change kind of what we're saying in that regard. And I'd say the last one is the biggest one, feedback from sales reps. Super beneficial from an inbound side is why are they coming to us at this moment? Why are they buying this specific platform now? That's how we then turn around and use those agents to flag companies that could be entering that buying stage again. So it's going like one step further than kind of the information that Warmly's providing, that Vector's providing, that 6sense is providing, is more so what's the actual pain point, and that's what we've turned around and baked into our messaging. That's pretty much it. Any questions?